So now that we have the jacket sloper, the jacket front sloper and jacket back sloper, we need to make a sleeve to go with the jacket. All right. So what you need to do is you're going to need your size 10 sleeve sloper, and you need to make a working pattern of it. So here's the working pattern for my size 10 sleeve sloper, and let's put that aside for 1 second. You also need a piece of pattern paper. Okay, so we're going to start by setting up the pattern paper, and then we'll do our sleeve working pattern in just a minute. So what I want you to do with your pattern paper is just fold it in half lengthwise. And then unfold it. That helps us find the center of the paper. And now let's go ahead and mark that crease. Down the center of the paper. I'm just going to make 2 marks. That makes it easier for me to put my ruler against it and find and draw that line. Okay. Go. And now take your working pattern, just place it on there, and let's mark and line up the center line of your working pattern with line you just drew. And let's draw on our bicep line. So I'm just going to mark the 2 edges of my bicep on here. So, and let's connect those. Okay. So we'll get back to that in just a minute. Let's put it aside. Alright, so let's take our working pattern. And we have the back of the sleeve and the front of the sleeve. What we're going to do is take and fold the intersection of your sleeve seam and where the cap meets it. You're going to fold it right to that center line. Okay, so basically here's your bicep line. Bring it so you go right to the bicep line, on top of bicep line, and then just crease it all the way down, like so. And then do the same thing on the back of the sleeve. Fold that point in and crease it right on down to the bottom. And now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take the cap of our sleeve and we're going to fold it right down to the bicep line. Like so. Okay. So now I'm going to mark in those creases. This will make things a little easier to see. Okay, again, so each of those creases, I'm just drawing them in so I can see them. And you'll see that we divided our sleeve up. What we're doing here is we're going to make a larger sleeve, again, to go with our jacket sloper. Okay. So now we're going to label these. Here, notice we have like sections now. In these 4 sections in this corner, we're going to put Z, 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 Z. In this 4 sections, we're going to put Y. Okay. And here we're going to put X. Like so. Alright, once you've done that, take this piece of pattern paper again. Now, we're not going to put the sleeve on here yet. We have a little more prep we need to do to the pattern paper. But you can see how this is going to line up. Okay, you remember how it's lining up. So what we want to do here is here's our balance line, which lines up with our bicep line. Okay, so bicep line, balance line line up. We're going to measure a 1/2 inch below this balance line and mark a line. So just put your 1/2 inch mark line right there, or ruler. Measure off that line for a 1/2 inch. There we go. And I'm doing it the whole length of my paper. Okay, here, okay, on our grain line here, or through the sleeve, we're going to measure out 1/8 of an inch on each side and draw a line. So let's go ahead and do that. And draw it on the other side as well. And now we have those markings on each side. So now let's start. We're going to line this up and we're going to start basically grading this up to a larger sleeve. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut right down our center line here of the sleeve. And we're going to line up our bicep line with the original bicep line. But we're going to line up the center line with that line that we drew that's 1/8 out from the original one. And just lightly tape this in place for a moment. There, and then this side too. Okay. Now what we're going to do is where our sleeve cap is, we're going to cut this portion off. So cut right through here. So, don't mix those up. Now, from this cut edge, you're going to add on 1/4 of an inch. So from this cut edge, put your 1/4 of an inch line right there using the ruler and draw on 1/4 of an inch. Now take the cap and line them up right on that line, on your 1/4 inch line and 1/8 line. Okay, do the same thing on this side. Okay, now we're going to cut down our bicep line. And let's make sure take this off for now. And make sure these stay right on that original bicep line. Okay. Now this red line on each of these, you're going to cut down. Side, same thing here. That side. Make sure this is secured. It's not going to move around on you too much. Okay, from here, from this cut edge, we're going to measure out 1/8. So from here, measure out 1/8 and mark a line. Right there. Same thing on this side. Measure out 1/8 and mark a line. Now take the sleeve cap, the sides of it here, and bring it up to that line you just marked. That's 1/8 out. So you can see we're adding in more width and more length to our sleeve. Again, make sure that's secured down. There we go. Now let's bring these two ends of our sleeve, the arm of it, back up. Okay. Let's secure it. Again, against this lower bicep line. Remember we lowered that bicep line down? So let's secure that. And tape it in place. And same thing with this one. Okay. Now here on the front, let's cut down this slash line that we drew on here already. And on the back, we'll do the same thing. And again, we're going to add 1/8 of an inch in here. So off that line we just cut, measure off 1/8 of an inch and mark it on the paper. And do the same thing at the back of the sleeve. Measure 1/8 of an inch off, that line we just cut, and mark it. There we go. And now let's secure down this part. Bring it up to the lower bicep, where we lowered the bicep 1/2 inch into that new marking we just made 1/8 of an inch out from the bicep line. Or 1/8 of an inch out from our cut line, rather. Same thing in the back. Alright, so I'm going to put a couple more pieces of tape here just to make sure this is secured down. We're going to eventually take this off, but until then we got to trace it off. Alright, one more thing we're going to do on this, what's going to be our new bicep line, that red line. We're going to measure out from the edge of our sleeve a 1/2 inch and mark on both sides, front and back. Okay. So now let's go ahead and trace off this sleeve. Okay, I'm going to trace it off in a different color than what the finished sleeve will be. Don't forget to mark the legs and center fold line of your dart. And also the dart tip, okay? So just use your awl, put your dart tip right in there. Don't forget to transfer your directional notches. Okay, front directional notch. And then just the inside of the seam here in the front. Okay, I'm going to use my ruler and I want to make sure I get my elbow seam nice and straight here. So I'm just going to transfer it here on this side like that. Okay, and you might transfer your dart notches there for better accuracy using your ruler if you'd like. Okay, so now we can go ahead and remove this working pattern. Alright, now we can start truing this. First thing we need to do is let's figure out our cap. And our curve ruler. Here's the very top of my cap. I'm going to bring the edge up just like this. I'm going to do this in red first and perfect it to make sure I get it exactly how I want it, and then I'll do it in black for permanent. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of square out in each direction about 1/4 inch. And then I'm just going to follow the curve as best I can. Notice how I'm holding my ruler, large end, come down. Okay, and we're going to do the other side too. And now what we're doing is, remember, our sleeve originally cap ended here. It's coming down here and a 1/2 inch out. So this new bicep line out. So where this 1/2 inch mark intersects my bicep line, that's where I want it to be 0. So I'm just going to find a curve that will fit that. I think that looks good right there. And let's draw that in. And that looks good. And so I'll do this side too. So there's the red line is my new bicep line. There's the 1/2 inch mark. So that's where I want to blend to. Right about there. And connect. Okay. I like how that looks. So I'm going to make it permanent. Do it in black. Typically, I would usually be doing this in pencil, but since the camera does not pick up the pencil very well, I'm doing it in marker. That's why I'm doing it first in red and then in black. That way you can see the difference. When I do it in pencil, I can just erase anything I don't like, but in this case, I can't erase anything. So I have to do it in a lighter and darker color first. we go. Okay, now let's draw on our dart. So there's the tip of my dart right there. There's the center line. Let's connect the two. I'm going to cross the tip of my dart and then connect it to the marks on the outside of the sleeve seam. Create your sleeve legs. I'm also going to draw in my elbow line, which will connect to the this upper leg of the dart to this mark right here. Let's draw on our hemline. Now again, I'm doing this in red first because there might be some adjustments I need to do. So I want to make sure it works first. I'm going to use my curve ruler. I'm going to blend from this tip here, this point here, to my hem. And I think that looks pretty good. I don't need a large curve there. And here, I'm going to blend down to my dart. Actually, what I'm going to do is fold out my dart. So remember, we want the seam allowance of the dart folding down towards the hem of the sleeve. So I'm going to use my tracing wheel on that first dart leg and then the center fold line. Fold right at dart tip. Crease the leg closest to the sleeve hem. Fold out the dart. There we go. Now, if you want to put a piece of tape there to hold it in place, or I'm going to use my curve ruler, and I'm going to find a curve that matches. I hit this point right there, tip of the hem, at the edge of the hem. That looks good, I think. Now, before I unfold that dart or do anything, I'm going to fold this and make sure this seam matches that seam. Just tape the dart closed for now. Okay, so line up the outer edge. You should be able to see through your paper. So what I'm going to do is line up my intersection of my sleeve cap and the seam to the intersection of the sleeve cap and the seam on the other side. And then make sure my two seams match. Looks like they're matching at the hem. Looks good. Okay, now if I want it to be perfect, I can see that they're matching at the hem and that intersection of sleeve cap inside in the seam. But if they're like not matching here, I can take my tracing wheel and trace off one of the seams to the other side of the paper to get it perfect. So I'm just gently tracing my upper seam allowance through the other side. Okay, so this side seam allowance I traced off. Okay, so again, this seam allowance I matched up these 2 points to these 2 points, and then I traced off this line through. And you can see it was pretty close. You may not be able to see. My tracing marks easily, but they're pretty much around that red line here. It goes in a little and then blends back. So I'm just going to follow that new line. It's right there. And I'll draw that in black. If I open my dart on that black line of the sleeve seam, trace through my dart seam allowance to get the dart opening. Open that up. Now I can connect or true in my dart opening. My hem I know is good to go, so let's go ahead and true that permanently. And I know this side of the sleeve seam is good because I transferred it over. So let's go ahead and true that in black. All right. Draw in your directional notches. Okay. Now let's put a little information on here. This is your jacket, sleeve, sloper, size 10. Put your name and the date. There it is. Okay, so on the next demo, we're going to go over how to make sure, how to adjust your sleeve cap so it has enough ease to fit into the armhole of your sleeve jacket sloper.